Greetings and welcome back to the Bet Like No One's Watching podcast. I'm your host, John Sullivan. You may know me as Buffalo66. You may also know me from my Twitter page, Buffalo Hold'em, or other podcasts I'm involved with. I want to say hello to any new listeners we have from Fear the Beard Media, who kindly distribute this podcast on many popular platforms such as iTunes, Stitcher, and Podbean. So welcome if you're checking us out for the first time. And let's get right into it. It's the weekend, and I usually don't record on a Saturday, but it's been a busy week for me lately, so here we are. So what I usually do is recap my recent wagering, and let's see where we stand. Last week, CFL was 1-1, thanks to one of the most beautiful bad beats I've ever had by Ottawa Red Blacks, throwing a pick six with 9 seconds left to lose by 7 when I had Ottawa plus 5.5. Now, it's not cool to complain about bad beats, but losing is as much a part of sports betting as winning is. And both can be very spectacular at times. I can, recall off the top of my head several wins as well as several losses that occurred at the last second on unexpected events. Regardless, it does stand out. But that puts me at 16-12-1 on the season going into week 16. Of course, not including this week's wagers, one which I already lost. We'll talk about next week. However, moving on to the NFL was not a great week for me. 1-3 overall. Last podcast, I talked about the Miami-Cincinnati Thursday night game, and I was completely wrong on that game. I was fading the Cincinnati kicker. Information said he was not 100%. And he goes out and kicks 5 field goals. I said Miami is a team that fights. They don't quit. And they generated very little offense, and they were down 15 with 3 minutes left. And one touchdown would have given me either a push or a cover. And they quit. They ran the ball and basically ran out the clock. Did not really try to score. Very bad result for me. I guess I was just wrong. It was a trap game. And those creamsicle uniforms for Miami, I get a big yuck. I don't bet on teams based on their uniforms, but that didn't make me feel any better. So moving on Sunday, I bet the over on Buffalo, New England, and surprisingly, it was New England that disappointed as the Buffalo Bills won 16-0. I expected Hoodie to play much less conservative than he did. He played right into Buffalo's strengths, punting a lot, making the game a quote-unquote a shorter game with rushing. I'm not saying that he tanked the game, but it seemed like he coached not to lose instead of coaching to win. Feels like he pulled a Popovich where he didn't play Gronk a whole lot of snaps. He didn't expose his team to potential injury going for a W. So that's what it is. And then finally, I had two sides. I split on the Seahawks and the Panthers. Seahawks won pretty easily. But the Panthers struggled against Atlanta. I suspected that Cam Newton hadn't been playing at 100% given the recent offensive troubles that Carolina has had, and this concussion has obviously confirmed that. Also, Derek Anderson came in the game when they were down 15 or 22 points, and he moved the ball with ease for that offense, which makes me really confirms that Cam was the problem. So they did get it within a score, but they weren't able to tie it up. So my week puts me at 7-10 on the NFL season. Plenty of time to make up my losses as we roll into week 5 of the season. And before we get to upcoming picks, I've got a special segment today that I'm going to do on NHL. And faithful listeners of this podcast know that I'm limiting myself to only handicapping CFL and NFL for this time of the year. However, NHL starts this upcoming week. I was asked by a few people if I'm giving up NHL completely, and the short answer is no. While I will not be handicapping hockey, I've decided to execute a betting system experiment, actually two different ones, on NHL totals this season, and I'll explain them right now. Let's start, for those of you that are not familiar with betting on hockey. NHL totals, and totals are over-unders, for those of you not familiar with the term, are unique to all other team goal sports because the games never end in a tie thanks to the shootout in the regular season. It's widely known that 5 is the key number in NHL totals, as it is the outcome with the highest frequency of occurrence. Now, this not only happens in overtime games, but in regulation scores. So, example, the score could be 3-2, or the score could be 4-1 or 5-0, and those all have a total of 5, and that's the highest frequency. So now I took time to go through the last 3 regular seasons of NHL team data, and I came up with the following results, data points that are interesting to me. And then the first one is that 44% of all NHL regular season games are 1-goal games, which means they finish with a score of 1 difference, such as 5-4 or 3-2 or 1-0. And obviously all 1-goal games are odd-numbered results. For example, it'll be 1-goal total, 3-goal total, 5-goal total, etc., etc., etc. Second data point is 29% of all regular season games are overtime games. And all overtime games, because they are 1-goal games, are odd-numbered results. As a subset of that 44%, 29% are overtime games. Now, extrapolating these numbers, you would expect at least 60% are odd-numbered results, if not higher. What I mean by that is, if 44% of all games are 1-goal games, so you know those 44% are going to be odd-numbered totals. If you take the other 56%, at least a third, somewhere between a third and a half of those games are also going to be odd number totals. So, you know, a 7-0 game is an odd number total. It's not a 1-goal game. A 5-0 game is a odd number total, but it's not a 1-goal game. But you would expect at least 60% are odd number totals. So that's something that we're going to set over to the side while I talk about another set of data that I researched in NHL, and that is what's called the empty net scenario. Now, for those of you not familiar with hockey, if a team is behind 1 or 2 goals late in the game, they usually pull their goalie and they try to score a goal on the opposition by using an extra attacker. And my calculations show that in these scenarios, that roughly 10% of the time, the trailing team that pulls their goalie scores an empty net goal. Roughly 33% of the time, the team that's ahead scores an empty net goal on the team that pulled their goalie. So roughly 43% of the time, a goal is scored in an empty net scenario. Therefore, 50%, the difference of these instances, there were no goals scored in that scenario. So we have the one set of numbers about the odd totals for the games, and then we have one set of numbers about the empty net scoring. So what do these numbers mean, and how can we use them for developing a betting system? Well, we know that the odd number totals score most often, and 5 is the highest frequency occurrence. And then we also know that 43% of the time a goal is scored in an empty net scenario. So looking at NHL totals at a sports book, most of the totals are set at a starting number of 5, and they're moved based on who's in the lineup and who's the starting goalies are, and then further moved by market forces such as betting dollars and betting frequency. However, we still know that 5 will be the most common result whether variance occurs or not. Therefore, given the first set of numbers, my first betting scenario with NHL totals is to take either over 5 or under 5 when getting odds at plus 105 or better. While instinctively this seems like you are usually betting against the market, because if you're getting over plus 105, it seems like the market forces are pushing in the other direction. It will create, even though it's instinctively seems like you're betting against the market push, it will create a significant the market trend, I should say. It will create a significant number of pushes because a lot of them will end on 5, as 5 is the most frequent occurrence. And a win rate of 50% of non-pushes will be profitable over the season. Now, some days you'll get much better than 105. Some days you'll get plus 125. Some days you won't. But it will vary. And so as a system play, I'm going to track over 5 and under 5 in regular season games for the NHL going forward. Now, in the second set of numbers, we had a scoring rate of 43% on empty net goal situations. So, assuming that 5 is our most frequent occurrence in outcomes of a total, our second betting scenario will be based on 5.5 because the empty net goal will often push the scoring to an even number, thus moving over the most likely outcome of 5. Now, our second betting scenario is betting over 5.5 when the betting odds are offered at plus 140 or greater. And now, since we score 43% of the time in empty net situations, we don't score in 57% of the time in empty net situations. And based on that number, we would bet under 5.5 as an expected positive EV bet of minus 120 or better. So that creates two betting systems for NHL totals. And so we're going to play over-unders on 5 and over-unders on 5.5 given those market odds. I will be tracking these two betting experiments. I'll be wagering very small amounts, smaller than my regular unit. But I will keep records for each system on my Twitter feed at Buffalo Hold'em. So if you're following along, you can check them out as the season goes along. I'm sure there will be peaks and valleys. Maybe a disaster, may not be, but it will engage me during the NHL season, and maybe I'll pick up some new information that will help me further down the road. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm continuing to handicap the football while this NHL betting experiment goes along. Now, before I finish up with my picks for the upcoming week, I want to thank Rosters.com for sponsoring this podcast. Please check them out if you want to try Salary Cap Daily Fantasy Sports. There's some great daily fantasy sports options there, and I recommend starting there because you can use sign-up code CRAZY to get a $20 bonus instantly added to your account on a $10 deposit, and that gives you $30 to play with right away. So it's a good way to help you build your bankroll if you want to dabble in daily fantasy sports. Remember that sign-up code CRAZY at Rosters.com. So, moving into Sunday NFL, I have 3 plays locked in for Week 5. And the first one is Lions +3 at home versus the Eagles. This is a classic parity game situation. Philly's undefeated. It's with a rookie quarterback. That is an unsustainable path. Detroit should bounce back at home. They are rarely non-competitive in consecutive games. I I know the Lions are like the Bills and they can't have nice things, but they know how to lose close games. So I expect them to compete this week. And I think that's gone to 3.5, but I've got plus odds at 3. I will take a look at the odds Sunday morning, and if anything is extremely more attractive, I may place a second wager. Moving on to play number 2, I have the Texans at the Vikings over 41. And both of these offenses, I believe, will continue to improve as the season progresses. I would think that the passing game for Houston should pick up. Lamar Miller has been kind of disappointing, but that's something that I think is going to be their strength going forward. The Minnesota defense is very stout. Houston has been missing J.J. Watt. That should help Minnesota offense. And hopefully Blair Walsh will not miss many kicks this week, as he has been wont to do in the past. So they can get to 41 points here. And finally, my third pick for Sunday is the Jets at Pittsburgh. And I have them at under 48. And I feel like playing on the grass at Heinz Field benefits the defenses, especially in a potentially bad weather game. I really don't know what the forecast is at this point, but bad weather even makes it more attractive to play the under here. I don't expect Fitzmagic to be mobile or accurate under these circumstances. I expect a similar performance as the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game. That this would be like a 23-17 type of tilt. Hopefully there's not any big special teams plays. So that being said, I've been pretty lousy at totals so far this year, so your mileage may vary. So 3 plays locked in for Sunday. I'm 7-10 on NFL. We'll see how that goes. Also, I expect to have a CFL play on Monday for Canadian Thanksgiving. There are 2 games on Monday. Still waiting on those lines to develop. And there's always the possibility that I'll have a Monday Night Football play. Remember that all of my plays and my betting records can be found on my Twitter page at Buffalo Hold'em. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to get me, get at me there, and I'll be happy to respond or explain any of the jumbled nonsense I just spouted off today. I also archive all of my podcasts on my YouTube page, which is also called Buffalo Hold'em. And you can visit there and listen to all my past podcasts and any other media appearances I've had. So thanks for listening and checking out the pod this week. Enjoy the games on Sunday, and I'll try to get my podcast out sooner next week. Until next time, bet like no one's watching. Take care.